Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody nice and warm. I am boiling. Thank you very much for coming along to our Buy, Build chat. I'm Fernando Lucchini. I run artificial intelligence in the UK for Accenture Digital. And this is Saeed Hussain, who is one of our lead architects for artificial intelligence. We're going to take in the next half an hour, 20 minutes, and then we'll talk a little bit, 10 minutes for questions about decisions of buy versus build when it comes down to artificial intelligence. As you can imagine, at Accenture, we help a lot of our customers make these decisions, and I found it quite humorous when Saeed came up with this nice quote from Reinhold Messner, who obviously, as you may not know, but he's a very famous climber, and he said that famous, it's always further than it looks, it's always taller than it looks, and it's always harder than it looks. And when I think about buy versus build, in many cases for our customers, it is very much like that. It's a harder thing than it sounds. For reasons that we will be taking you through the presentation. So hopefully we'll have some fun with that, and you'll have some fun too. I don't think I have to, I think we can agree all together that most companies, enterprises, small companies are playing in the AI space, building something at some point, somehow. Some statistics that you can play with, 53% of organizations are implementing pilots, 45% are implementing projects. This is important insofar that in doing so, value is not always being found. This is a perennial problem. It is what it is. So how can we make better decisions, quicker decisions that get us to this value? And in some of this, the question is, do we buy it? Do we build it? And what are the pros and cons in doing so? Right? Which is pretty important. 4 of the key challenges that I wanted to bring up, and these are my key challenges, and I'd love to, as I see my customers and Saeed sees our customers, so it'd be great to hear yours at the end as well. One of them is this AI sprawl. AI everywhere, and you can't build a product now if it doesn't have AI, you're missing out, right? Which, if you're in a company, everybody's trying to put AI or create a group that's going to drive AI, right? This sprawl is somewhat unhelpful because it drives lack of focus. You don't know where to go. You create something unique that's reusable in a company, and somebody will say, well, I'm also doing it over there. So this sprawl is actually quite hard, makes it quite hard to make good decisions around buying versus building. The inconsistency around implementations. Because of the sprawl, we end up building things in very different places, maybe not with the same quality that we particularly wanted to have to begin with. So it's pretty important as we look through this that we look for consistency. And I say we'll take you through the details. The next one is governance. We're seeing a lot of lack by governance. I mean, not just regulatory governance, but governance across the entire process of value. How do you build things solidly, consistently, repeatedly, with quality and value across the entire idea chain, and then start again? We also see this experimentation type environments grow and grow and grow and grow that don't have that strong governance across them. So it's important that we spend a little time thinking about what governance means. And finally, the delivering business value. It sounds obvious, and Saeed and I talk about this all the time. It sounds obvious that you start doing things because you think they bring value to the company, right? It sounds obvious. But I don't necessarily think that's what ends up happening. And say, we'll take you through a bunch of the reasons, and it may well be because you're wanting to learn what the technology can do for you or not, for example. You may be experimenting, you may be thinking, what's the art of the possible? And for all of these reasons, you may spend a lot of time and money and not necessarily deliver sort of immediate, quantifiable value to your business. So how do we try to get all that we need and still build value for our customers, right? So 4 of my pet hates, and I would love to, as it gets to the question time, that you guys give me your pet hates so I can add them to my list of what are the people's pet hates, right? Saeed.
Cool. So our hypothesis is that AI solutions will follow a typical path that was followed by web, mobile, and digital when it comes to implementation of AI, right? So if you look at the bottom left-hand side of the corner, we're talking about experimental implementation. So you're doing experiments within your firm. As you get a bit more advanced, you start centralizing the capability, and you'll see a lot of firms moving this way right now. And then when you get really advanced, you start embedding these capabilities back within your organization into different units. Do you guys recognize the S-curve? This is a typical S-curve that you see. If you were to think about it, and feel free to jump in, what do you think would change if this S-curve was adapted for AI? What would be different? Just shout out something. Anybody? No takers. Fine. Okay. So the S-curve would probably look something like this. AI is one of the few technologies that we have that get better over time. If you think about it in biological systems, since our AI solutions follow biological solutions, when you have enough data and computing power being thrown, and additionally more and more data is coming in, your solution gets better over time. And this is unique. No other technology does this. All of our technologies depreciate over time after you've made it. This is something fundamentally different about AI. Cool. So thinking about buy versus build, our hypothesis, if you follow the logic so far, is if you have a strategic solution, something that is unique to your company, something that uses either the data that you have or the capabilities that you have or the expertise that you have, that is unique to you, you should build it. If, however, it's a solution that keeps you in the game that everybody else is doing, don't spend time and effort building it. Just buy it. Buy the capabilities that you need that are required. Right? Cool.
Super. Buying. And again, we've drawn that decision at the beginning of whether strategic or tactical, and it's a pretty important one, but we should break it apart a little bit. When we talk about something being strategic to you, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But I think we like to think of it as something that's going to give you a persistent strategic benefit over a long period of time. Think of it in those terms, a persistent value over a period of time that differentiates you. Again, it doesn't make a difference that if it's strategic, but it's strategic to everybody else and everybody does it the same way, then strategy goes out the window, right? So when you're thinking about the buying, think what are the products out there that in some cases I'm going to need to bring together to build a solution because there's not enough of a market that already builds the end-to-end solution that I need, right? So what are the pieces I need in order to think of the car industry? Car companies seldom build the whole car. They build a blueprint of a car and they buy the pieces and integrate them together to build the car and build some of the ones inside that they find useful. A good example is injections or brakes that they buy from Brembo or from Bosch. So there's two elements of this. Is what are the market is not either for you to buy the end-to-end solution, which you should do if it's a tactical problem, just go and buy the solution end-to-end, or a service, even better, buy value, don't buy bits. That's one piece of the puzzle. The other one is that doesn't exist, but there are plenty of products in open source community, in smaller companies that actually solve substantial pieces of that problem and that you can integrate quickly. So your buying decisions have to play around all of those things. So how can I get it implemented quickly, which means I don't have to have core artificial intelligence skills. I might have good engineering skills that allow me to put things together. So good engineering skills, most companies these days have good engineering skills in that respect. Secondly, do I have these solutions at a sufficient lower cost that they made sense as well? So again, you're trying not to build because build is expensive and it takes time and expertise that you may not have. If you have a sort of equivalence in the buying world, then once again you're back to decision making, right? And we're going to show you a nice flow diagram that helps you understand this and work through this mentally. But for me, the buying situation is whether you're buying a set of products that make up a solution and you integrate them because it's too early and there's not a solution that does it. API is a good example, speech to text, right? These days you go to Microsoft or IBM or whoever and you buy the value versus 5 years ago where you might have had to buy a smaller company and integrate it yourself. So two big differences. Buy products, integrate into a solution, buy solution and buy value because it's immediately available and you can take it. That for me is the critical part of the buying decision. Building.
Cool. So if you're actually trying to build a solution versus buying a solution, you'll see that the outcomes on top are similar, but the two key things that you need to think about that are enablers for you to build a solution is you need some kind of model generation and management, and you need data management, right? Data management not at the level that you need if you're buying it, something much more fundamental because you'll be using this data to train your models, right? So data becomes a lot more important now. Model generation, model management becomes a lot more important. So if you take the key takeaway from this slide is that you get similar outcomes, right? But you have to do a lot more. And this only makes sense if it's a strategic differentiator for your firm.
Quite. And then I say we see this time and time again when we think about building and we've got all that enthusiasm from people in the firm that want to learn and want to, and in many cases, learn with the canonical examples that find out which are totally undifferentiated. So sometimes the enthusiasm overtakes the reality, and you're in a position where you have to think about how data gets managed. You have to think about how engineering happens, how you're going to live with it over time because this technology requires continuous management. And these things are very serious considerations when you decide to go into the building. And to go through this, we've created a very nice, really teeny flow diagram when you look at it on the slides. So I will read it out for you because I will be squinting.
Just one quick note on that. So the average time to get a model from training into production is about 6 to 9 months, all right? 6 to 9 months to get a model from experimentation into production.
Yes, and we're talking about all the things that go around it, but we can have some fun with this. So, and we've had enormous fun creating this flow diagram. Hopefully you'll appreciate it. But first step, does somebody need this? You're going to create something. Does somebody need it? Obvious? Yes? How many times we see people creating things that nobody needs? It happens all the time because we're trying to learn, because it's fun, because it's interesting, because we think it's future-proofing. So we do have to ask ourselves, does somebody actually need this? Second part of this is, will they pay for it? Again, it sounds super obvious, but how many times have we found something that we think society needs, but we actually haven't asked the people that are going to consume it? And we don't know what it's worth it to them. We have no idea. And within companies, we see plenty of examples of not even have asked the question. So not even seeing the mortgages department that are going to buy this, or not even seeing the procurement department. And they're sitting there thinking, it's a great idea. It's not in my top 5 priorities. Next. So if you find either of these conditions, eject, stop, start again. Sounds obvious, but get yourself trained to doing this. Next part is, can the technology deliver? This is, again, sounds like super obvious, but I'm sure you guys will have some questions later, but how many times do you have within your company a set of group of very enthusiastic data science people and AI people who will probably jump that step because they want to figure out, oh, hold on, we'll go and figure it out, we'll have some fun, we'll do an experimentation, we'll do a pilot, we'll do a test, hold on, we can probably take an elevator test and figure out if this thing, it's in the ballpark of, can be done, should be done, will be done. And we see lots of time, Said and I specifically, because we work on it day to day, a lot of time spent on the, oh yeah, absolutely, let's go and build a neural net to get out product names. Yeah, but you have 5 products. You can just put them on a list. It happens a lot. So can technology deliver? If it can't deliver for you, don't worry, revisit it, right? So once you figure that out, the question of is it strategic or not? Truly, is it truly strategic? Sit down and really think, is it going to change the way that my industry? Am I going to change the industry? I always have the example that you and I play around with of the cars that when you're driving around and it starts raining, the phone, somebody calls you, but the phone doesn't ring because the car thinks it's dangerous. Is that a car company problem or an insurance company problem? I'm of the thinking that it's an insurance company problem, but that kind of changes who should build it, right? Because it's strategic for one or the other. So really, truly think, is it going to really change what I'm doing? Next part of this is, do we have the ability to deliver it? And to Said's point, do we have the data science? Do we have the strong processes? Do we have the build capability? Do we have the data capability? Do we have all the things that actually allow me to do this properly? Not a specialized group that has just started and is trying to think about how these problems work. So do I truly have the ability to deliver this? Which obviously means if yes, if you do, then plan to build a thing. Get yourself planned, organize it, and finally get a business plan. Because funnily enough, there's a difference between planning to build something and actually having the business plan that says somebody's going to pay it over the long term and support it and all these kind of things. So get all the commitments right. And that's your perfect circle if everything goes your way and you're great at innovating, you're great at delivering great products first time. But what if it's not strategic? What if actually it's a tactical situation? It's something that you need now because everybody else is doing it, because you feel that you're not going to be, you're going to be left behind. There's perfectly good reasons for doing tactical work, right? So what do we do then? Obviously, if it's neither strategic nor tactical, obviously, please eject. Get out quick while you can. And again, that happens more often than you think, that it's neither strategic nor neither tactical. It's interesting versus useful, maybe. Right? So if it is tactical and we should, what do we do next? Well, at this point, we might ask ourselves, look, we may not have the capability, but because it's tactical, it's not really high value, it might be all right for me to actually build the capability on it. So it may be that question, do I build my people skills, do I build my systems, my data across one of these sort of less dangerous situations? And if so, maybe you want to ask yourself this question. Are the competitors around me ahead? Or is this time sensitive? Because there's lots of tactical decisions make up a strategic advantage, right? So if we're actually losing out on small pieces of functionality that our competitors are using, do we end up looking like the losers because we don't have all those bells and whistles? Simple examples like good online banking seems like a novelty today, but if you don't have it, you're really far behind, right? So it's become a tactical thing as opposed to a strategic thing. So another decision point. So now we're thinking, is it tactical? Yes, we may want to build it, but time. So then we have to ask ourselves, is this commoditized? Which is the same situation you want to be when you do we want to build capability? If we don't, we still have to ask ourselves, if we don't want to build the capability, or if our competitors are ahead, we have to ask ourselves if this, whatever we're trying to do is commoditized. Why do we want to ask ourselves this question? Seems like an obvious thing, right? But because it makes your decision on building, buying, and adopting kind of changes, right? So here you go. So if the solution isn't commoditized, it means there's no great solution out in the market that you can take wholesale end-to-end, solves the problem, done. The car situation, cars take you from A to B, there's nothing that's missing from them, right? So at that point, my experience and our view generally is that you should think about buying the pieces that in themselves accelerate. So the open source community is great, smaller companies, bring solutions together, engineering them, and make your plan, right? And there you go, that's how that finishes. If on the other hand, the solution is commoditized, this is not rocket science. Find the partner that's doing it end-to-end, right? Find the solution that you can buy end-to-end. And there is no shame at all in following that great path rather than spending a lot of time trying to build something that actually somebody's already built. What does need, and this is one of the things we should have described in the buying setup, is that this does require for you to have quite an advanced procurement function that can buy value. You have to have quite an advanced engineering function that can put together products and give you a solution quickly. If you have none of these things, you're still back into the no situation, and you can't do it, and you have to stop. And again, we engage a lot of time and effort in cycles where we're thinking, oh, hold on, the solution's in the market, but I don't have the people skills, the solutioning skills to figure out what these things are so I can implement them. So if we're going to be experts in buying, we have to set ourselves up so that's the case. We have to get people out there that understand technology and that can actually figure out what's good and bad. We have to have great procurement that can say, here's how you buy value versus buying a product that you have to decrease value over 5 years or whatever. Right? And obviously, as you fulfill that, if you can't use a partner, then if you don't know how to do that because your procurement doesn't know how to buy an API, what do you do then when the answer in the world is a speech-to-text API, but you can't buy it? What do you do? Well, you're back to maybe following all this thread back and what, building it yourself? You know, think of the absurdity of most companies building their own speech-to-text. It's absurd, right? But it does happen because of these kind of flows. And finally, of course, if you can work with a partner, then directly, boom, go back down and build yourself a business plan where you understand the economics of the partner model, the economics of long-term support, and all these things. Because at the end of the day, for all of these go-aheads at the bottom, you still have to be mature enough to understand, do I know how to run a product long-term? Do I have any examples around me where I know how to do that? Because if I don't, what makes me think that I will be able to be successful there? For integration, do I have a long-term integration story? Do I have a partner like Accenture or others that can help me with that? Do I have that worked out? And of course, finally, am I very partner-friendly? Do I know how to work with people that give me a service and I don't feel like I'm eroding my own IP? So as long as you fulfill this cycle, and again, I'd love to hear you, what am I missing from my little strategic plan? And I'll add your name to the bottom of the slide. But if you follow these simple rules and you are really honest about your capability at each of these steps, we really feel that it makes a big difference to how you buy versus build this kind of technology. And the biggest problem, I think, Saeed, you tell me if you agree, is that there's a lot of hype that makes you trend towards build, experiment. So how do we think outside the hype? How do we know what we're good at? It's been delightful to talk to you about a topic that I feel very strongly about. You can look forward to the article that we'll write where you'll see my ranticle. It's a rant and an article in one. But hopefully we'll talk to you when we get down. Thank you very much for having us.